So I asked the question, what's one of the big mistakes you can make in gardening that's easy to do each year? And I will tell you this because I made this mistake early on in my market gardening career and path. And I hate to start off a video with something negative, but it's something that you should be aware of and think about as well, is a mistake that's a simple one to make, and it's a mistake where you're trying to do exactly the right thing, and it can come off actually damaging or even killing your plants, and that's overwatering. And I'll give you a perfect example. Our first year on this farm, I had never raised Swiss chard. And Swiss chard is one of those things that it likes cooler weather, it likes early spring, and it likes fall, which we're in right now, mid to late November. It loves that time of year until we get a hard frost. And I've even seen Swiss chard come back from, we got down, even here in zone 8, which is a very warm zone, we got down to 4 degrees 2 winters ago. All the Swiss chard died and it came back. But back to the subject. What is the mistake that I made that was so difficult on those plants? And that's overwatering. It's a simple, easy mistake to do because we, in our mind, think, okay, my plants need to be watered every so often. I don't want to do things to harm them. I want to make sure they have water. And that's great. Here in Zone 8 in Central Texas, we go through some brutal summers. And sometimes with this drip system that I have out here, as you see this drip system around me and behind me, we have to run it every day because whether it is okra or it is Swiss chard or especially cucumbers require a lot of water. So in the summertime, that's something we have to think about because if we don't keep up with the watering, we can really have a lot of damage and not have the harvest that we're looking for. But in the winter months, and I'm going back to my elementary, maybe junior high, middle school days. I can't remember when I learned this. But of course, as we move into the winter solstice, as we move into wintertime, the earth is going around the sun. The earth tilts on its axis. It tilts away from the sun. I believe this is correct. You can put in the comments if I'm wrong. But the sun is at a different angle, a lower angle. Of course, sunlight, we have far fewer hours. The sun is coming up later and going down sooner. And because it's winter months, the temperature has changed sometimes dramatically. When we had days out here in the summer, midsummer, that were 105 degrees, we will definitely now have nights out here that are going to be in the 40s. And 2 nights from now, we're supposed to have a pretty hard freeze, not a hard freeze, but a good freeze here in mid-November. So the reason I give that little geography explanation as we go into these winter months, and of course the southern hemisphere, if you're watching this in down in South America, Chile or Argentina, you're going into summertime on the other side of the equator. But here, as we go into winter months, it's cooler. We don't have those days of a lot of heat, and it just does not require as much water. So when you go out each day, one of the things you have to pay attention to is the amount of moisture that's in your soil, and be careful not to overwater. Because I'll go back to the example of my Swiss chard. Is the first year I had Swiss chard, and I went out and I was watering every single day for over an hour, which is a bit long on that drip system for the Swiss chard. And I couldn't understand. It was starting to wilt and starting to look bad. And I thought, well, maybe it's the heat. We're in the really difficult, hot season of the year. And I couldn't understand why my Swiss chard was not doing well. And then I started noticing, especially at the lower ends of the rows, which we have a little bit of a tilt to some of these high tunnels, is that it had way too much water, way too much moisture. So I started cutting back the amount of time I watered, and even in some cases I was going to every other day, and that Swiss chard came back and was really starting to thrive again because I was literally flooding it. I was just drowning it in too much water. So I tell you those stories because this time of year, you just don't require as much moisture, especially in these lower zones in the United States. Upper zones, you may be growing inside of high tunnels like we do. And of course, high tunnels are a whole different thing. They don't get moisture. You have to use the drip in there and think about it as the aspect that they're not getting any rain. But the same principles apply in there. It's easy to overwater. It's still cooler in there, so it requires less water. But out in these open rows where we are growing lettuce, different lettuce mixes, Swiss chard, our spinaches, it just does not require as much water. So I know this is just a simple thing, but whenever you're having your fall gardens, and just as we have turnips in this row right here, if I put my finger down in there, we had a little bit of rain yesterday. It's more than enough damp. It doesn't need any watering today. And the same thing holds true for many of my vegetables outside today because they had a light rain yesterday. It's just not going to need it today. All I would end up doing is oversaturating the soil with too much moisture. So keep that in mind. There's little nuances about a garden like that that can really make a difference. And we all want to do the right thing for our plants, so they do their best. And sometimes watering is what we think of what we need to do, but sometimes we can over love the plant, as I always say. We can over care for it and put too much water down. So hope that helps. Think about your garden. I always like to say the best way to know about the moisture, get your hand, your finger down into that bed, into that compost, feel the soil. And if you feel good moisture down 3, 4, 5 inches, you know that the roots of those plants are getting the proper amount of moisture. So blessings over you, your family, your garden. And we always like to have good videos. You'll see one in this corner that's suggested by YouTube. We'll have another one over here that's our latest. Check those out. Our purpose here at Whirlwind Family Farm is to take you further along in your gardening experience and to be able to get you where you want to be with your garden. Blessings over you, your family, your garden. Take care. Talk to you soon.